going to walk you through step by step how to complete this apple with banana painting. And remember, we took the stripes out. You are just simply painting the outline of the fabric, and we'll do different values of those blues. If you want to do the stripes, you are welcome to. If you've been taking art all through middle school, or if you already paint on your own, then I encourage you to challenge yourself and paint those stripes. But for everybody else and the rest of us, we're going to make the fabric plain blue. All right, and I'm going to start by putting a few scoops. Remember, we're not dipping more than halfway up the bristles on my palette. And most of this paint is dry. I'm just putting fresh paint in all the dry places. You don't need to throw away the press and seal. And that way we're not wasting plastic. And once it's dry, and sometimes if you have a big chunk that's dried on there, you can actually peel it off. Sometimes that chunk you can actually peel out and then keep using it. All right, so the first thing that we just want to do is we just want to start by putting a layer of yellow all over the banana and on the apple. All right, I'm going to let this yellow paint dry. And while that yellow paint is drying, I think I'll go ahead and put down my first layer of blue that's going to go in my background. All right, as my brush starts to run out of paint, you can see it start to spread out, and like we can see the background. And now I'm going to barely dip my brush in some water, just the tip of it. I'm not dunking the whole thing, and that will help me make the paint last longer before getting more. So taking whatever is left on the brush, whatever's still wet on the paper, barely dipping the very tip of the brush again, and then kind of what I call scrubbing. So I'm kind of like just using the tip and scrubbing the paper back and forth to fill it in, just using tiny bits of water at a time. And I have not actually gotten any more paint from when I first scooped it up to paint this section. And so what I'm kind of trying to do is I'm looking at the picture and I'm noticing that this corner has some darkness to it, and so does this section. So these two sections I'm going to paint a little bit darker, and then I'll add more white and paint this section and this one, and then I'll paint this one the same color as well, and then I'll add more white to paint the section that's in front. So the colors, the fabric that is further away is darker because it's further away from the light. And so I want to make sure that I paint that kind of all the same value of blue. And then I'll add white to it to make it lighter for the next section, and then even more white for the closest section. Again, just using tiny bits of water to help move that paint around. You do want to paint in the direction of the fabric, so use the stripes to help you figure out what direction your paint should go. These lines diagonally because the direction of the fabric is going diagonally. And you can also rotate this around and get to the parts that you need. That's why I don't change and use a smaller brush, because I just rotate the paper to get at the angle that I need it to be at. And then I'm barely using the very tip of the brush right along that outline. I'm going to turn the paper this way so that my hand is kind of always going the same direction, and I just rotate the paper so that my arm doesn't have to change what it's doing. It's kind of like muscle memory. Okay, gonna get a tiny bit of water to get that paint all the way to the edges of that yellow. Alright, so I'm going to use water, get a little bit of paint, and then work on putting in that outline. You have to be really slow and careful. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and keep putting on the same color that I already had everywhere. I think that's what I decided. But I'm going to try to paint the sections so that I can remember where they are, as opposed to just painting across the whole thing. So if I paint across the whole thing, I'm not going to remember where my pencil lines are, and then I got to try to go back and fix it later. Okay, I did add quite a bit of water to my brush right now, which is what is making it lighter. And that's okay, as opposed to just adding more white paint. The outline of this will get taken care of later. It's just really more to help me remember. Alright, painting all the way to that pencil line. No halos. That's where you leave a gap between the background and the object, and it creates this white space, kind of like what I did here. That's okay because we're going to all paint that later. But we want to make sure around our objects, where the background meets our objects, we don't want to leave a halo there. I'm going to go ahead and paint that in now. I'm just adding white directly because it didn't really become as light as I wanted it to, so I'll just add it directly in there. I did get a little bit of water to help move this paint because it's kind of drying up on my paintbrush. And I am resting my wrist. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm resting my wrist down, that bone right here. That sits on the table and for my stability, so that I'm really only having to use my fingers. When you get too much movement, then it can make your painting messy because you're not steady. Alright, and then holding my brush sideways, instead of using my little brush, of course you could use your little paintbrush to get to that little detail, but I don't want to switch brushes, so I make this one work. Alright, getting a little bit more paint, tiny bit of water on the tip of my brush, try to finish this section out. Alright, and whenever I am wiping my brush, usually like this, that's a way of flattening out the bristles, since I can't use my hands right now because it's full of paint, but by flattening both sides, it is a way of reshaping the brush. And that's what I'm trying to do so that I can try to get a nice clean edge right here. Use a tiny bit of water, find a place to wipe the brush to try to reshape it. To allow me to get to those other parts. Alright, tiny bit of water, more paint, wiping it to reshape it.